The Rav has said that stainless steel does not absorb. Nevertheless, in the Rav's guidelines for koshering for Pesach, he said that one must kosher a stainless steel sink by pouring boiling water on it. But if stainless steel does not absorb like glass, why should it require any koshering at all other than cleaning, of course?
All right. Well, one of my problems in life is that I have a number of Talmidim who are altogether too clever. They understand too well what I say, and they follow through with ruthless and unrelenting logic. And then they say, so why is it necessary to do this if you say it's the other, such and such is the case? On one level, technically, the questioner is correct. But to be more precise, I will say as follows. Stainless steel, I never said it doesn't absorb technically at all, but the absorption is of such a minimal and almost immeasurable extent. It's so minute that it is almost impossible to measure. According to one study that I saw approximately 9 years ago or something like that, done in a laboratory setting, the absorption was the figure they gave was 1 part in 70,000. Now, 1 part in 70,000 is considerably more than 1 part in 60, as you can well understand. So it's a whole lot. It's a different, totally different reality from the concept of batel b'shishim. So even if the stainless steel was to absorb, let's say, 1 part in 1,000, it would still be a long, long way from any kind of absorption that would have halachic significance. One part in 70,000 is almost off the scale. I also spoke years ago to Rav Moshe Antelman, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, who was a Tamid Chachamim, and he was also a chemical engineer. And he worked with metals in the industrial setting. He knew about these things. And he said to me, I asked him, I said, stainless steel, does it absorb? He said, well, it does. I said, all right, how much? He said, 2 or 3 atoms, perhaps, is what he said to me. In other words, we're talking about a level of bli'ah, of absorption, that if it's clean, if you clean the stainless steel thoroughly, and it can be cleaned thoroughly, then, so if a pot is absolutely spotless, then technically it is not halavi, and it's not basari, and it's not hametz, and it's not masa, it's not pesach, it's nothing, assuming that it's thoroughly clean top to bottom. But we all know that that's in a perfect world. In the real world, not every pot is cleaned absolutely thoroughly. Something might be left on the upper rim, at the bottom, on the side, or whatever, on the handle, and we have the catch-all Yiddish phrase, "es passt nicht." In other words, it's not proper. In other words, it doesn't, even though you don't cook with the handle, but it doesn't look right, doesn't feel right if you can see there's something a bit greasy on the handle of the pot, which you know is from meat, to cook something dairy in the same pot. It just doesn't feel right, even though you're not cooking with the handle. You know, the grease on the handle, even if it's there, is not going to jump into the milky dish that you're about to cook in the same pot. So for this reason, not just for Pesach, all year round, I do not suggest to people, I've never suggested to people that they do not have 2 sets of dishes and 2 sets of dishes, 2 sets of pots and pans. I've never suggested that, because I think it is a very reasonable approach to say, technically stainless steel does not absorb halachically in any meaningful way. And when you clean these things thoroughly with detergents and the various agents that we have available, and you make a point of removing whatever can be seen, you can really render them essentially pristine and completely genderless, so to speak. But because we don't live in a perfect world, and things don't always work that way, I think it is correct to have two sets of dishes, two sets of pots, etc., two sets of frying pans. And the same is true for Pesach. It is an easy thing. It is an easy thing to kasher stainless steel pots for Pesach. You clean them thoroughly. You do hagala. Now, to do hagala, you can either take it to the place that they do hagala in your neighborhood, or you can boil water on top of the stove, so that it boils over a tiny bit, just overflows a tiny bit, and the pot is clean, and the pot is kasher. The pot is now muhshar for Pesach. You can do that with stainless steel utensils very easily. It's more difficult. You cannot do exactly the same thing with glass, but then again, because glass in extremes of temperature would usually crack or shatter or what have you, but glass usually is not used with high temperatures, and therefore regular glasses from which one drinks, one doesn't have to have special glasses to drink from on Pesach. One can use the same glasses that one uses to drink throughout the year, even if you drink beer in that glass, because you don't drink hot beer, you drink cold beer or room temperature beer, depending on whether you come from North America, Australia, or the UK, depending on how you prefer your beer. And even if the beer is room temperature, even if it was lukewarm, I don't know anyone who drinks lukewarm beer, and even if it was hot, glass does not absorb. That's a cloud. Glass does not absorb. Full stop. So with glass utensils, this is not an issue. You don't cook in glass. You do cook in stainless steel pots, or in aluminium pots, perhaps, or something of that sort. These things can easily be kashered. However, the knowledge, the fact that stainless steel and aluminium do not absorb any significant kind of absorption which is halachically significant, this allows us, in unusual or extreme circumstances, to come up with a solution. Let's say a person is stuck somewhere for Pesach, or it doesn't matter, it could be throughout the year. They arrived in some place and they only have one pot, and they cannot possibly get their hands on another pot now. And they think this pot was probably used for tray food, and now they want to know if they can kasher it, and they think it was probably flashy, now they want to make it milchid. It was meaty, now they want to make it dairy, and now it's Erev Shabbat, and they have to cook something quickly before Shabbat. So you have to know what do you say in such a situation? Do you say, well, you can't do anything about it, it's flashik, it's besari, nothing to be done? Or you can say, well, actually, if you can clean it thoroughly, then you can use that pot to cook food for Shabbat rather than not cook food for Shabbat. And the same is true for Pesach. If a person is in a situation where they will not have utensils for Pesach, unless we tell them you can use these kinds of stainless steel utensils that you use all year round, you can use it for Pesach as well, then that will make their Pesach very difficult and unpleasant and not very happy. There'll be no simchat hag, perhaps, because they won't be able to cook food or something like that. This, of course, is not a common circumstance, but it can happen. So the knowledge of the knowledge of the reality of these metals and their chemical, physical properties and the halachic significance of those properties is an important piece of knowledge and something to be aware of when you are asked certain questions and how to solve certain problems. So I'll give you a simple example. If a person says, I have a stainless steel knife, and by accident it was used to cut. It's a milchik knife, a dairy knife, made of stainless steel, but it was used to cut a piece of steak. Well, the first question is, okay, well, you don't eat a steak which is at a temperature of 100 degrees. Even if it's hot, it's not all that hot by the time it gets to your plate. So it's a very simple thing to solve that problem. You clean it off, and you just pouring boiling water over it from a kettle is sufficient, in my view, to kasher a knife in that kind of situation, which is a common kind of question that comes up. So that's why it's important to know the reality of stainless steel and other metals that we use today, which are very, very different from the kinds of cooking materials that were referred to in the Talmud, where the average pot that was used for cooking was made of heres, which was made of porous earthenware, which is a very porous material, which certainly does absorb a great deal. And that's what the Talmud was speaking about, as Rambam points out explicitly. Whereas pots made of iron, and even how much more so of steel, cast iron obviously absorbs a great deal less, many, many orders of magnitude less than earthenware, but still will absorb more than stainless steel. About that, the Ra'avad already writes that you have to estimate as best you can. This he writes in the Middle Ages when he couldn't do this in a laboratory. The Ra'avad says you have to estimate how much could possibly be absorbed into a metal pot, the kind of metal that he knew of, which is probably some kind of cast iron. And then you can calculate the amount of absorption that might be, and then you can begin discussing if there's a problem with the food that was cooked in this pot or not. With stainless steel, the problem is again many orders of magnitude less problematic. That's what I've said in the past, and that's what I maintain today.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org. If you are inspired by Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to get involved in Torah Eretz Yisrael activities in your local area, please fill out the relevant form by going to the link which appears on the screen.